Excerpt of The History of Simcoe County by Andrew F. Hunter. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The History of Simcoe County by Andrew F. Hunter. Innisfil, Cherry Creek and its neighbourhood. Before 1830 a few families had taken up farms, and were already making their first clearings. To notice the more conspicuous, at least, of these settlers, and to review the most notable incidents of their first years in the forest, the plan proposed is to begin at the southern extremity of the township and proceed northward along the Penetanguishene road, making short digressions here and there into the various intersecting concessions, wherever a particular individual or event of notoriety should be recalled. Lewis J. Clement, a Dutch Canadian, arrived on North Half 16 Concession 1 from Niagara in June 1829 with his wife, one child, a hired man, and a yoke of oxen. He built a temporary brush tent, which was by them called home, for a brief period, until a more substantial and commodious dwelling place could be erected. Clement's house, built by the carpenter James Soles, was the first frame house in Innisfil, and is still standing. In subsequent years Mr. Clement became a magistrate. He died April 9th, 1873, in his 74th year. A large family then survived him, of whom the best known, perhaps, were Dr. Lewis Clement of Bradford, and Stephen Clement, who was for a time deputy sheriff of this county under Sheriff Smith, and who afterward became sheriff of Shoal Lake district at Birtle in Manitoba. Robert McLean, an Irish soldier, settled upon Lot 17, Concession 2, in May 1829, a month earlier than Clement. Dugald McLean, a son of this pioneer, and John Laurie, Jr., were the sawyers of the settlement, and they were drowned about 1840 off De Grasse Point. Both McLean and wife died from an attack during an epidemic of cholera, which carried off numerous settlers in that section in September 1849. Another notable pioneer, though not one of the earliest, was Charles Wilson, South Half 15 Concession 2, who arrived and settled in 1833, in company with the McConkie brothers of Lot 15 Concession 5. He came from the north of Ireland, Tyrone or Derry, and to a member of that family he became married. He was one of the 3 wardens of Innisfil for the year 1841, before a township council was organized, and filled other important positions at different times, but in 1850 he removed to Tecumseh. On a corner of his farm, Robert Laird, who had settled at an early date, opened a store about 1835, the first store in Innisfil. This was the nucleus of Cherry Creek. James Rogerson, North Half 19 Concession 2, a native of Scotland, arrived in 1833. Of his family, which was large, several members of it became residents of this neighbourhood. Alfred Wilson, the son of a U.E. Loyalist, came from Holland Landing after the rebellion and took up the north half, Lot 16 Concession 2 at Cherry Creek. He was the representative of Innisfil at the meetings of the Simcoe District Council from 1843 until 1849, both years inclusive. He also contested this county in December 1851 with the Honourable W.B. Robinson, but was not successful. Some time later he moved to Belleuert, where he lived until his death in 1888, at the age of 77 years. Hiram Wilson, his brother, with 2 sons, Lambert and Wellington, came from Sharon in York County, later, and purchased South Half Lot 16, Concession 3, near Cherry Creek, also becoming settlers of long standing. The Dalhousie settlers. Innisfil, like West Gwillimbury, had its Scottish settlement, but the group of settlers which it comprised came from another quarter, and at a later date, the autumn of 1832. We turn off the main road now to notice this group of interesting pioneers. Previous to that year they had settled in the township of Dalhousie, Lanark County, but finding its rocky surface anything but a congenial dwelling place, and seeing no prospects of making a permanent home there, they deserted in a body and settled in the southeast of Innisfil. Their native place was Glasgow and its vicinity, where some of them had belonged to the recalcitrant brotherhood of Glasgow weavers, so notorious in British history. They had left Scotland at the time of the intense public excitement preceding the passing of the Reform Bill. Most of them had taken part in the agitation, and, like the Pilgrim Fathers of an earlier time, they preferred to live beyond the sea rather than endure the grievances of their native land. Most of them, too, were platform orators and enthusiastic reformers, which their descendants are to this day. The individuals who lived with their families composed this interesting group of settlers were: John Laurie, north half 17 concession 2; Rev. John Climie, south half 17 concession 2; John Todd, south half 19 concession 2; Hugh Todd, north half 12 concession 5; Gavin Allen, 15 concession 5; Robert Wallace, south half 22 concession 5; William Duncan, south half 18 concession 6; William Cross, 20 concession 6; James Jack, north half 21 concession 5. They settled closely together, and this circumstance, together with the fact that a number of their descendants remained at the old homesteads and in the same neighbourhood, gave the south east part of Innisfil the Scotch Presbyterian character which it possessed. At the rebellion of 1837 some of these settlers did not desire to go to the front and assist in quelling the uprising, as they naturally sympathized to some extent with the principles advocated by William Lyon Mackenzie and his party. As the Dalhousie settlers were not outspoken in their opinions on the matter, they were suspected of having non-pacific intentions. One of them possessed an old rusty musket, which was promptly taken from him lest he should aid the rebels' cause, and he was forced by Loyalists to go to the frontier. This circumstance attached the name of rebels in disguise to the Dalhousie people and their descendants for some years after the rebellion. Another report was circulated that they had been banished from Glasgow to Dalhousie, and that they had fled from their place of banishment to Innisfil. This report was chiefly made to do duty at municipal elections when any of the Dalhousie settlers were candidates. John Laurie, the first on the list given above, was a prominent person in his neighbourhood, and a platform speaker of ability. His two sons, John and William, together with Dugald Maclean, were the three sawyers of the settlement, for which they manufactured almost all the lumber for the district, with a whipsaw in one of the old-time saw pits. About the year 1840 John Laurie Jr. and Maclean obtained a canoe near De Grasse Point one Sunday afternoon and set out to cross the lake to Roach's Point, on the opposite shore. They were never heard of afterwards, and it was supposed that they had been drowned off De Grasse Point. The other son, William Laurie, probably became better known at one day than any other member of the group. A few years after his arrival in Innisfil he married a daughter of Rev. John Climie, and filled a variety of callings. At one time he preached occasionally; at another he occupied the position of chief constable of this county, after having served a term in Bradford as bailiff of the division court, and another in Barrie in the office of Sheriff Smith. At other times he was bailiff, auctioneer, etc., and travelled throughout this county to a considerable extent in these capacities. Few men in his day knew it better than he. One of his most notable exploits was the arrest in 1858 of Robert Couture, the outlaw, charged with murder at Holland Landing. On another occasion he was in company with John Rose of Bradford, when they were beset by robbers near the place, but the two succeeded in warding off the attack. Subsequently he removed to Roxeter, Huron County, where he carried on a conveyancing business for some years, and reached an advanced age. Rev. John Climie, the second individual on the foregoing list, had been a weaver in a village 7 miles from Glasgow. A brother of his started the famous Clark Spool firm of Glasgow, the name of the firm continuing for several years to be Climie and Clark. His family consisted of 4 sons and some daughters, who came with him from Scotland. One of the sons died in Innisfil soon after their arrival. Rev. John Climie, Jr., of this family, was a Congregationalist minister, and was stationed from 1840 onward for some time at Bowmore, now Duntroon, in Ottawasaga, and subsequently at Darlington, 1851, Bowmanville, 1856, and Belleville, 1861. It appears to have been difficult for him to abstain from taking part in politics.